Hi, my name is Jack Sargent, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the increasing rate of wildfires in the American Cascades and all over the American West, and the effects it has on the entire nation and our futures. All right, so the increase of wildfires caused by climate change has directly led to economic and other losses in the American West and all over the nation. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Cascades, going into the problem that they face, the people directly that are affected and the people causing it, and then possible solutions of how we can fix this problem. So number one, the Cascades. The Cascade Mountain Range is in the western United States, covering Oregon, Washington, California. It also stretches into Canada. I'm specifically going to be talking about the parts in the United States. As you can see from the picture on the top left up here, it stretches all along the west coast, far down, and then this is the rainfall that we see in those areas. You can see right on the mountains, you don't get a ton of rainfall. You do get some snowfall, but it's not enough to keep it wet year round. And you can see in these pictures down below, the left would be the more temperate rainforest Cascade region, and on the right you'd see the brushier, more the eastern stuff that's a little bit more susceptible to fires. But it's all being affected right now. It's characterized by high mountain peaks, forested regions, and there's a lot of cities nestled in the mountains in this area, as well as a lot of reservations out here on the west that can be affected by these fires. So what's the problem that they're facing? In the Cascades, more square kilometers of forest were lost in 2020 than in the last 30 years combined. And this is largely caused by climate change. Climate change has caused a lot of effects, especially to rainfall. So in this region, rainfall has been significantly down, causing longer droughts, drying out the land. And the more droughts that we've seen, the longer the fires are able to burn because they have a lot more fuel. And that's according to drought.gov. Climate change has led to severe droughts, which have dried out the land, making the fire season last longer, which is the biggest thing. That it is, they do get fires, but they're now year-round versus when they were just in a specific season and they were predictable. And the biggest problems that these fires cause is specifically property damage, causing a lot of damage to personal property, as well as ranch land, farmland, that sort of thing. And then smoke inhalation is a big one, causing increased cancer rates and other respiratory issues across the nation. Fires in Oregon can blow smoke all the way to the Midwest and cause us to have issues. 3.35 million acres of land have burned across 11 states from 2001 to 2018, and then 8.8 million burned in just 2020. And then you can see here, this graph on the left shows the cancer rates. In Oregon specifically, you can see in that Cascade region where the fires are burning a lot. You can see where it's really causing some increased cancer rates. And on the right, that map is reflected with this is where the fires are burning, this is where the cancer rates are, right? So it's a strong correlation between where fires burn to where there's a higher rate of cancer, specifically lung cancer. And then who are the stakeholders in this? Like, who's being affected? So we have the ranchers who own a lot of that land out east of the Cascades. And a lot of their land burns, which means their cattle have less to graze on, which means increased prices of beef products across the nation. So economically, it can really hurt us. The native people in these regions, so there are a lot of reservations out in western Oregon, western Washington, and then northern California. And the native people living in those areas, whether they live on a reservation or not, their land is burned and affected by these fires. So sacred land can be burned and destroy their way of life living off the land. Other residents of the region also suffer from property damage and smoke inhalation. And then firefighters are a big one. We've seen a lot of firefighters come down with respiratory illnesses and higher cancer rates as a result of fighting these forest fires. And they've had to really adapt the way they fight fires, starting fires intentionally ahead of the fire to kind of burn a fire line, which is nothing new, but they have to do it now year round. And employing those firefighters can get expensive for the state. And the people causing these issues, specifically the polluting corporations who are responsible for climate change, people who are outputting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, causing climate change, who don't want environmental regulations to be passed, even though it's necessary for multiple things related to climate change, but specifically for fires. That's a big part of it, is the emissions. And then logging corporations are kind of on both sides of this, where they lose money when their land is burned, but also by cutting down trees and leaving that land barren, it makes it easier for the fire to blow across it and spread rapidly, right? So the logging corporations are kind of on both sides of this, and they need to be pushing larger for a change to happen. So you can see here who wins, who loses. Logging corporations, I have them on the losing side, but they win and win by continuing doing their harmful logging practices, and they do a good job of replanting trees, but it doesn't make the land lost any better, right? So I have polluting corporations, and then those who profit off lower environmental regulations, so specifically politicians who lobby and lobbyists who lobby for lower environmental regulations, making a lot of money off of not having environmental regulations put into place, right? So that's a big thing. And then what can we do to fix it, right? What can we do to really make a change? So Time estimates that $11 billion worth of damage will be caused within the next 10 years. So this will be in our lifetime, something we'll see directly, something that will really hit the United States hard, right? Economically, haven't been in a great place since 2020, and it's only going to continue to get worse with environmental catastrophes such as fires, hurricanes, large monsoon events happening all across the world, but specifically in the United States being such a volatile nation climately, right? So what can we do directly? First of all, reducing emissions. So reducing CO2 emissions is the first step anyone will tell you towards a healthier planet, right? So we really need to focus on cutting down our emissions on the home front. So whether it's not necessarily driving everywhere, right? Those sorts of things, that makes a big difference. We saw in 2020 when people were off the roads, emissions were reduced by almost 90%, right? That's a huge thing. And, I went outside and you can feel it in 2020. You could feel the difference from people not driving, more birds. It just felt healthier outside as a result of people being off the roads because of the pandemic, right? So that's the number one thing. Number two would be passing regulation to limit CO2 emissions from the corporation, because there's only so much we can do. They are the large emitters of CO2. So passing those regulations will be huge. And then another thing you can do personally is reduce risk to starting fires. So when you're in any of these regions that are volatile to fire, you got to be very careful when using any flames, starting fires, anything like that, handling matches. Be careful not to start fires. Fires are still going to happen. They're a very natural part of the ecosystem, but it's not constant, right? And then we need to find some new ways to fight fire. So there are people doing great things in the wildland firefighter area, but they struggle to sometimes catch up. And although fires are a large issue that threatens us all, it's an issue that has a solution. If serious positive climate action is made, we can alter the course of our planet for the better. And I think it's important to note that a lot of people will say that, hey, fires are a natural part of the ecosystem in these areas, and they happen a lot. And although that is true, the increased rate is the biggest concern for this, right? So the increased rate from the 80s and 90s, early 2000s to now in the 2020s can really spell some bad news for even these corporations, and specifically us. And these are my sources. If you'd like to do any more deep dive in any of this, I was only able to cover kind of the surface level stuff they provided in my presentation, but the sources go into great depth on all this and do a great job of providing a lot of really important and meaningful statistics that can really help us in fighting this issue in the future. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.